Welcome to the ShadowBear Story Sessions, the podcast about brutally dark and insanely hilarious old folk tales. We're going through Grimm's fairy tales, the original versions, not the cleaned up, pretty nice, family-friendly versions. These are the gritty originals. These get morbid, these get dark, these get pretty twisted, really. And these are the stories upon which all modern storytelling is based. So explains a lot, really. Today's story is called The Poor Maiden. And it's a little short, so we might just go right on through to the next one, depending on how much time it takes us to get through this first story. So now we begin with The Poor Maiden. We begin. Once upon a time, there was a poor little maiden. Her mother and father had died. Okay then, poor little maiden indeed, starting off real dark, unsurprisingly. And she no longer had a house in which she could live. It just gets sadder and sadder with every word. And a bed in which she could sleep. So she's got nothing. She had nothing more in the world than the clothes on her back, and she carried a small piece of bread in her hand that someone who had taken pity on her had given to her. And that's not going to last long, so she basically has nothing. Despite all this, the maiden was good and pious. All right, so she's still a good person. Speaks to her character. We continue. As she set out on her way, she encountered a poor man who asked her so desperately for something to eat that she gave him the piece of bread. Oh, what a little sweetheart. Then she continued on her way and met a child who said to her, "My head is freezing. Please give me something that I can tie around it." So the maiden took off her cap and gave it to the child. And after she had walked a bit farther, she came across another child without a bodice. What's a bodice? Is that just like the clothing you put around your body? Is that what a bodice is? Who knows? It's kind of irrelevant. It's clearly clothing. So she gave him hers. There you go. Further on, she met another child. There's a lot of needy kids in this place. This is a really, really sad place. There's clearly deeper problems going on with this society. We have a whole host of children who don't have any clothes or ways to keep warm or food or anything at all to provide for themselves. What's going on with this society? Help these people out. Come on. She met another child who asked her for a little dress, and she took off her own dress and gave it to her. All right, she's got to, keep some clothes on, right? She's got to keep some of her own clothes. Just out of, legal ramifications, right? I mean, okay, if she gets totally naked, then she'll go to jail, I guess, and that's probably warmer there than it is in, clearly it's very cold outside if this kid's head is cold. So, yeah, then she'll get taken to jail, and if movies are anything to go by, they'll give her a blanket there, and then she'll be able to sleep there that night, and someone's got to take pity on her, right? I mean, I'm guessing this is like medieval times, so maybe that isn't quite the system they're operating on with jail and jail blankets, or at least my understanding of them, which may or may not actually be a thing, but maybe that's her plan. Maybe that's her plan. Maybe she's like, oh man, all of these other kids are so pitiful. I really want to help them because of how pitiful they are. If I make myself the most pitiful, then everyone will help me. Maybe that's her plan. It's definitely not, because that's clearly not the way this story is going. But wouldn't be a bad plan, necessarily. We continue. So, she gave a kid her dress. Finally, she came to a forest, and it had already become dark. All right, well, if you're walking around naked, don't go into the forest. Unless there's, some, warm-looking brush you could hang out in. I don't know. That's clearly not a good plan. There's no one that can help you in the forest. It's just the elements. Then yet another child came and asked for her undershirt. Come on, kids. This is... all she's wearing is an undershirt. Don't ask. This last little kid who's asking her for the last shred of clothing she has, that little kid's an asshole. Come on. Come on, kid. Can't be asking. So that's just... this is ridiculous. So now there's a kid wandering out of the forest asking for her clothes. My goodness. And the pious maiden thought, it's pitch black. You can certainly give away your undershirt. And so she gave it to the child. So her logic is like, no one can see anything anyway because it's completely dark out, so being naked is irrelevant. All right, that's kind of a temporary solution, sort of short-term thinking on her part. It's gonna get light in the morning. What then? Then you're very much in trouble here. And I don't... yeah, you are already extremely vulnerable as a child with, like, nothing. Don't also be naked. Come on. Like, I understand generosity, but, like, you also gotta take care of yourself a little bit, right? Like, there's... at a certain point, come on. Just help yourself a little bit, girl. Jeez. All right, well... it's dark, and she gave away her undershirt. All of a sudden, the stars fell from heaven and turned into pure, shining, hard coins. And even though she had given away her undershirt, she had another one on her made from the finest linen. So she gathered the coins in the undershirt and became rich for the rest of her life. The end. So she went insane and died. That's definitely what happened. She definitely lost her mind in that moment from the cold and died right there and then. And that was a happy hallucination in her dying moments as the last cold breath left her. This is not a good story because this is not the reality. The lesson here is supposed to be like, if you're good and generous to others, then you will be rewarded by the stars, by karma, by the world. This isn't... I do believe in that to an extent, but not like this. Not in this way. In the way that it might actually happen is like one of these people who she helped then came into some good fortune and remembered her kindness and helped her. That's how karma actually works in the real world. That's how putting good out into the world comes back to you in reality. The stars don't turn into golden coins and I'll make a shirt for you. That's unrealistic expectations is what I would say. Don't be like this girl. Be nice, be generous, help the needy children, but don't literally kill yourself in the cold. We know it's incredibly cold based on how many of these kids were freezing. And also that one kid's head was cold. That's the giveaway. The only time your head is cold is when it's really cold. So we know it's nighttime. We know it's in the forest. And we know it's been really, 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 really cold. So what actually happened here is she went to sleep and she never woke up. That's what happened here. This is a really sad story, and it's just like the last one sentence is like, and everything works out great for her. Not going with that on this one, guys. Not buying it. Not a fan of the poor maiden. Not a fan at all. And yeah, that was way too short. We're going right on to the next one. The next one is called The Mother-in-Law. Man, that was so sad. That was a really, really sad story. It starts off with like, hey, there was a girl and her parents were dead and she had no house or belongings. Yeah, and it doesn't get any better for anyone from there. Even these kids that she helped, like, it's not really like doing, like she essentially let herself die. And like, end of the day, she's not helping these kids that much because she's not giving them like a ton of clothes. Like that one kid just like has a hat now. So I don't think that like helped his survival really. I mean, the person with the undershirt, was that kid like naked already? Because that's really sad. But did she then just like sacrifice her life for that kid's life to save his life? I don't know. These are lots of really dark, bleak questions that I don't want to think about anymore, if I'm being honest. So we're going on to the mother-in-law. We begin. Once there lived a king and queen. And the queen had a terribly evil mother-in-law. One day, the king went to war, and the old queen had her daughter-in-law locked up in a damp cellar along with her 2 little sons. How can she do that? She's not the queen. She's not the current queen. She's just his mother-in-law. The queen mother, or like the mother-in-law, or like, they're not as powerful as the queen. And like, if you're any of the other people in this castle, you're not going to be like, hey, I think we should definitely put the queen and the king's children in prison and follow this old lady's advice. Because if the king gets back, he's not going to be cool with his kids and his wife being imprisoned. Obviously. Right? This is insanity already. Also, why? There's no motivation here. Just says she's evil. It's not enough. Not enough motivation. Story. I need a reason why she doesn't like this lady. Why she doesn't like the queen. Yeah. Or, thinking about it a different way, maybe the queen sucks. And maybe the queen became the queen through some, very evil means herself. We only know that the mother-in-law is evil because it says so. But whose perspective is that? Story. Huh? Maybe the queen is awful and should be in jail. All right, but if that's the case, the kids still shouldn't be in jail, though. Doesn't explain putting the kids into prison. That's pretty sad. It's pretty sad. We continue. After some time had passed, the mother-in-law said to herself, I'd really like to eat one of the children. Whoa, lady. Jeez, okay, she's evil. This mother-in-law is evil. I take back everything I said. This mother-in-law is absolutely terrible. She's a monster. She's the worst. And maybe the guards obeyed her and put the queen into prison because they're terrified of her. But if she's this evil, how is she, still allowed to, live in society and stuff? If the king knew his mom was, this bad, come on, you can't let this lady just, be doing stuff out in the world. She wants to eat a kid. What are we doing here? Man, today's episode is rough for kids. This is bad here. We continue. So she called her cook and ordered him to go down into the cellar, take one of the little sons, slaughter him, and cook him. Dude, okay, don't do it. Cook, you just be like, no, what are you talking about, lady? I can't do that. I'm not going to kill the prince, one of the princes. Can't do this. We continue. What kind of sauce would you like? Asked the cook. All right, so I guess he's on board. Jesus, the cook is no hesitation. That means she's done this before. That means she's for sure been eating kids already. If the cook is doesn't even blink, he's like, hey, what kind of sauce you want? You want some veggies? She's like, hey, go slaughter a child. And he's like, okay, so turnips or carrots? What you think? My God. Yeah, she's definitely eating kids on the reg. That is very disturbing. Oof. All right. I'm going to collect myself for this one. A brown one, said the old queen. Gross. all right. I mean, there's like brown sauce in like England and stuff. I don't know what that is, if I'm being honest. Someone who knows what brown sauce is, please put it in the comments, because I have no idea what brown sauce is. It doesn't sound appetizing. Whoever's making brown sauce could be doing a lot more in the marketing department, in the branding and PR areas. Up your game there. Brown sauce, it's not an appetizing color. Brown. No. Pass. I'll pass. The cook then went down into the cellar and said, "Ah, your highness, the old queen wants me to slaughter and cook one of your sons this evening." That's that's how you're handling this, dude. Just like, "Oh, good evening. Hello. Yeah, so your mother-in-law would like to eat one of your children." He's being very upfront. Maybe he's trying to like give her a way to get out of it. Maybe he's trying to be like, "If you wouldn't like this and would like to say no and potentially not allow me to do so, please do so now so I don't have to." I don't know. We continue. The young queen was deeply distressed. Yeah, that's understandable. And said, "Well, why don't we take a pig, cook it in the way she wants, and say that it was my child?" Good idea. Great. That's a good idea, Queen. All right. Yeah, Queen's thinking. Yeah, maybe the cook was like teeing her up to like wink, wink. Like, let's figure out something around this. Figure out a way around this. The cook did just that. All right. So the cook is like not a psycho. The cook actually, I'm actually pretty impressed with the cook's behavior, because the old queen, the mother-in-law, was like, "Hey, I want to eat a kid." And he's like, "Okay, cool, great. Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to make that happen for you because I am a good servant." And then he went down there and he was like, "Hey, so she wants to eat your kid. What should we do about that?" And now he's going along with the young queen, the actual queen, to figure out a way around it. Well done, cook. So far, the cook is the hero of this story. The cook did just that and served the pig in a brown sauce to the old queen as though it were a child. Indeed, she ate it with great relish. She is psycho. Soon thereafter, the old queen thought, "The child's meat tasted so tender that I'd like to have the second as well." Just be like, we have leftovers from the first one, so we don't need to do that. Also, I feel bad for that thought. I just had the thought of like, even though they're figured out a way around this, I just had a thought of like, why does she need to eat the princes? Why couldn't she eat another kid? I feel bad for having that thought. It's like, that's not a solution. There's still a kid getting eaten if that's happening. So yeah, no, just keep going with the pigs here, guys. It's a good thing she's not checking on the like the prison cell to see if the kids are still there or whatever. All right, so she wants another kid. She wants that second kid. So she called the cook and ordered him to go down into the cellar and slaughter the second son. "What kind of sauce should I cook him in?" "Oh, in a white one," said the old queen. Does the queen like not know flavors? She's using is color. There's a lot of different types of white sauce. There's a bechamel. There's a ranch dressing. There's a butter sauce. There's a Alfredo sauce. There's all kinds of white sauce. There's like cacio y pepe, cacio. However you say that. There's all kinds of white sauce. I don't think that really counts as a white sauce, but whatever. Once you add the cheese, it looks kind of white. I really want some pasta now. I just got distracted with food. I don't think it's a good thing that I'm like getting hungry while reading this particular story. But yeah, she don't know food. Brown sauce, white sauce. Come on, lady, learn something. Maybe it's good she doesn't know food, because makes it easier to trick when she's trying to eat humans. The cook went down into the cellar and said, the old queen has ordered me now to slaughter your second little son and cook him too. Take a suckling pig, the young queen said, and cook it exactly as she likes it. The cook did just that and set it in front of the old queen in a white sauce, and she devoured it with even greater relish than before. Finally, the old queen thought, now that the children are in my body, I'd like to eat the young queen as well. This lady is losing her mind. Someone's like, report her, cook, tell her, like, this is not okay. The king is at war. He's not going to be happy if he comes home and everyone's eaten. Is he just trying to like pacify her and hopefully like ride this out until just trick her long enough for the king to get back, and then they'll be able to like come back? I just don't think this is an effective plan. Who's ruling right now? Is the old queen like ruling in his stead? Because that doesn't really make sense. Either the actual queen, the young queen, would be ruling, or there would be some like advisor or something who'd be ruling. There's got to be some power, like figures or like chief of the guard or whatever, security detail. Does she not have, the queen have any like handmaidens or even like a personal security? Like Game of Thrones, they had like the Hound and like the Mountain and stuff. It's like watching them on guard, you know, like personal security. I don't know if that's a good touchstone for like normal routines or how things actually were, but I mean, if you have an evil mother-in-law, you would take the initiative to be like, I think I should have a personal security knight or a few knights. Have a knight for each of my family because she's looking at my kids real weird. Yeah, makes no sense. But finally, the old queen thought, all right, she wants the young queen. The old queen called the cook and ordered him to cook the young queen. Okay. This is one of those stories that they didn't have the full translation. It looks like it says fragment, and it does wrap up. We do get a conclusion here, but it is very brief, and we don't get a lot of detail, which is unfortunate because I really was enjoying the detail, especially because I suspect that the old queen has run out of colors for sauces that she knows. And I was going to see how she's going to try to play that one. But yeah, so fragment. This is the ending. It doesn't like even say it or eloquently. It just lays out factually what happens. So, quote, the cook slaughters a doe the third time. However, the young queen has trouble preventing her children from screaming. Why are they screaming? Did he slaughter it in front of them? He didn't have to do that. Just like take it into another room. That's really distressing. Just the image of them screaming. Do it somewhere else, man. What the hell? All right, so the queen has trouble preventing her children from screaming. She doesn't want the old queen to hear them and realize they are still alive, and so on. What? That's the end. And so on is the end of this story. That's disappointing. Man. She doesn't want the old queen to hear them and realize they're still alive, and so on. Interesting. All right, well, I'm kind of gonna have to fill in the blank. So we got the three. Usually, three things happen, and then there's some type of resolution. We got the three things. We didn't get a resolution. Do they get revenge? Do they get out? Does the king come back? I mean, this tees up an adaptation pretty nicely, if I'm being honest. And I kind of love the framework here. So maybe, in place of an adaptation this week, I'm just going to finish this story as it is. I might double back to give a little bit more color and character to the characters here, personality and detail there. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do this time. We got an incomplete story. That is unacceptable to me. The people need to finish the story. That's why I'm here. I'm here for the people. So let's do this thing. Adaptation. We're finishing this story. Coming up. All right. Welcome back. Gonna figure out the ending to The Mother-in-Law. First thing to do, cast it. So, the young queen is going to be played by Zoe Kravitz. The old queen will be played by Frances McDormand. Because I really like watching Frances McDormand be mean to people. She's so good at it. It's so entertaining. I could watch her just berate random people all day long. So the old queen is going to be Frances McDormand. She'd really sell it too. You know, the old queen is like absolutely insane as a character. Like, she literally wants to eat children. So, we don't know if she actually does eat children, because she doesn't eat these particular children. But maybe it's not her first time with this. Maybe she's been on this children eating kick before. Who knows? I mean, the chef didn't seem fazed when she brought this up. So, I don't know, maybe check the population of the peasant children in this particular kingdom. But yeah, I do remember the story saying it tasted so good she wanted to then eat the second child, which kind of implies that this was her first time eating the children. So maybe she didn't, you know? Like, this is the first time she's like, oh, this is great. Bring me this second child. Yeah. But really, the chef did too good of a job, right? If that's the case. Like, he told her he was cooking the prince child. He should have just messed that up somehow, you know? Like, obliterate it with some spice. So she's like, oh, kids actually taste super gross. No more kids for me, thanks. But no, he was just too dedicated to his work as a chef, couldn't make a bad dish, and as a result, now this lady thinks children taste great. This is the one time he should have been bad at his job. It's like, hey, I did my best, and you know me. My quality is always there. But in this particular instance, I guess just kids don't taste good. Maybe you just shouldn't eat kids, you know? Maybe that's how you should live your life. Not, for any moral reasons. Just don't eat kids for culinary reasons. I mean, any way you could possibly just get this lady to not eat kids is going to be the route we should take here. But anyway, my point is that the actor playing this older queen needs to be somehow, like, grounded. They need to ground this character, this insane character, and make her believable somehow and real, and not just like a kid-hungry cartoon villain, you know? Frances McDormand is just that good. She'll be taking that on. And the chef will be played by Tim Roth. I really like Tim Roth. I don't know why exactly I went with Tim Roth for this, from Tarantino movies, and he's a phenomenal actor. But I just feel like he's a good choice here. He's sort of like, you never really know what he's thinking. You never know where his allegiances lie. Maybe I'm just going off of like Reservoir Dogs for that. But yeah, he feels like someone who could convince the queen that he was devious and on her side, and evil, but also like have a heart and look out for the young queen and help out the young queen and the two kids, help them not get caught, Now, story left us at a point where the cook slaughtered a doe instead of a pig. I don't know why they did a doe this third time. Maybe they're like, it's got to be different because adults, adults probably taste different to kids, right? I don't know what they're basing that on, what information they're using on that, but I don't know why they didn't just slaughter another pig, just for consistency's sake here. So they must have had a reason. I mean, I say that, but it's a folktale. There's a lot of stuff that happens for no reason, so I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that there actually was a reason. And when he slaughters the doe, which I guess he does right there in the prison cell, I don't know why he does it right there. It's not like the queen was waiting outside. It doesn't specify that. It's like right outside the prison cell for him to come back with the meat, with that like kid and then queen meat. And even if he did, like, bring out the meat, it would be the corpse or like the limbs or meat of a doe. Obviously not a whole woman. I also then wouldn't understand how he or someone else got a doe into the prison, right? Same goes for the pigs, really. If he needed to slaughter them right there in the prison so the queen could see him take the bloody meat out, I guess that would make sense, but how would they smuggle the animals in? I guess if he just walked out with like a few fillets of meat or like a wax paper package, you'd pass it off then and just trust that the queen isn't going to go in after him and like check. It is unbelievable though that she like never checked on like how many kids or like check on the remaining people as she sequentially was like murdering them off. Like thought she killed them. And that also means that the guards and anyone who has any interaction with the young queen isn't telling her this. So I guess they're all on board with fooling her. That's what we're going to go with. I mean, in my continuation of this, everyone likes the young queen, but they're scared of the old queen. So they're helping the young queen hide all this. It's like waiting it out, I guess, and hoping they can keep this going until the king gets back. All right, so let's get into this. I do want to try to keep everything that has already happened. I don't want to revise it for my own purposes. I want the challenge of working within the insane parameters that this story has set for us. So let's say that up until this point, the old queen, Frances McDormand, has indeed been going right up to the door of the cell chambers. There's the door, and then beyond the door is a handful of cells for the prisoners of the castle. She doesn't want to go in because she sees herself as being above the actual humanity of what she's doing. She's above consequences. She doesn't have to confront the reality of her decisions or her commands. She's the queen, and she relishes that she doesn't have to, that others will do her dirty work for her. But she still wants to somehow witness her cruelty, so she stands outside the door as the chef goes in, and she enjoys imagining what's going on inside. Now, this is never specified here, so we can get away with it. Let's just say the first time that the chef came in to kill the first prince, they had a little pig there because it was the pet of one of the princes. Let's just say that. And in that moment, they made the decision to sacrifice the pig so the child could live. There was just a moment of, understanding between the young queen and the chef. But of course, this would have still been very difficult for the young boy to lose his pet. And so let's say that the chef, Tim Roth, has shown Frances McDormand, or has known, sorry, I'm reading my notes here. So let's say the chef, Tim Roth, has known Frances McDormand for a very long time. He knows her very, very well. He knows that this may not be where this ends after killing that first pig, or the first quote-unquote prince. So, in the middle of the night, after he gives her that first meal, he brings another pig down to the prison cells. This may have actually been, she may have already said, "This is delicious, I'll have another one tomorrow." So at that point, that night, in the middle of the night, he could smuggle one in. And the next day, he's one step ahead. He knows her very well. He knows how to read her mind, so he finds a doe because he has access to meat. Venison, deer, is a type of meat. So let's say he knows someone who can get him a doe. And maybe his logic is that the meat of an adult woman would have a different texture to a small boy. I don't know about these things, and I'm very much glad that I don't. But let's say this chef does, or at least has a theory. So now he brings a doe to the prison cells in the middle of the night. And he brings the doe because it would have been too difficult to bring a full-grown deer to the cells and care for it there. It would have been a huge racket, I'm sure, but he could have just carried a doe. Yeah, but the two princes, they've never had a cute little doe around. They've been around pigs, because pigs are farm animals. They're common, so they weren't as bothered or affected emotionally by the death of the pigs. They know they were animals that were slaughtered. But they grow quite fond of this cute little doe because it's such a novelty and it's adorable. It's a doe. It's a baby deer. It's cute. So are pigs, but they've seen a pig before. They've seen lots of pigs. This is a little doe. It's adorable. But because they grew so fond of this cute little doe, when the chef has to kill it, they scream. And the queen is outside that door, and she hears this, and she recognizes the screams of the children, and Frances McDormand bursts in, and she sees the young queen and the two princes, and her eyes grow wide, and her face contorts into a scowl with rage, and she begins to berate the chef. She says, how dare he deceive her? And then Zoe Kravitz says, he was just protecting us from your madness. And Frances McDormand turns. She snaps her head and narrows her eyes at Zoe Kravitz. She walks up to the bars, and she just begins to, quietly at first, but viciously tear her apart. She says, am I mad? Look at yourself. You have dirt on your face. Your gown's traded for these filthy rags. You're no better than a ranting mad beggar on the street. And yet you call me mad. My madness built this kingdom. Made my son what he is, and he made you what you are. So if you think for a second that I don't own you, mind, flesh, and soul, you'll soon learn. Your heart will be on my plate before the night is over. Frances McDormand would kill that speech, by the way. She'd do it way the hell better than I did. And she turns on a heel and strides toward the door, and the chef, he suddenly lunges and grabs hold of her before driving the knife into her chest. And Frances McDormand, she falls to the floor of the prison, dead. And so it grabs, she's stunned. It's like, what did you do? The two princes, of course, they're also stunned. They're crying. They just witnessed their grandma be killed, even though they're smart enough to know that she was totally trying to kill all them. That's still some pretty intense stuff to see. So yeah, they're freaking out a little bit. So they're all like, oh, what are we gonna do? There's guards stationed all over the place. And then the chef looks down at her, at the body of Frances McDormand, and then he looks at his butcher's knife, and then he looks at Zoe Kravitz, and Zoe just looks right back at him, and she says, do it. And Tim Roth butchers Frances McDormand right then and there. Zoe Kravitz holds the boys' heads and covers their eyes and sings to them a song of her own childhood to drown out the sounds of their grandma being hacked to pieces. All right. I'm just going to pause right here. This one was already pretty dark, and my involvement has now somehow made it much, much darker even. I'm fine with it, So the chef now has a wax paper parcel full of meat because he was prepared, to leave with the doe meat. So now it's just a bigger parcel because he's, a man who comes prepared. And thankfully he brought plenty of wax paper. And so he throws her bones into a sack that he carries along with him. And just before he leaves, he turns back to Zoe and he says, I don't know how this is going to end. And Zoe just looks back at him and says in reply, thank you. So Tim Roth, goes through the castle, just acting like everything is normal. And he gets to the kitchen, because, that's where he would normally go. He's trying to just be nonchalant and make it seem like everything's fine. And then he goes out the back of the castle with a sack of bones to discard them in the place where he discards all the bone, which is all the bones from, his normal butcherings and cookings and various chefings, which is out in back of the castle in a forested area where he knows that the animals of the forest will take them away. And he puts them in a very dark, dense area, and he places her head atop this little nest of bones, and he looks at her with loathing one last time. And they were very close, so there was a friendship there, but he knew the monster she was. And he knows the forest will take her away for good. And then he turns back, and he goes to the kitchen. And one of the other chefs is like, "The king just returned from war. I guess we won." And the chef's like, "Oh, really? That's okay, cool, that's great." And in his head, he's like, "Okay, well, it's good, because now Zoe Kravitz will surely be freed. But the king will also be wondering where his mother is. If he wasn't back, nobody would ask too many questions before the animals could take her bones away, but he'll be wanting to see her. I'll be putting pressure on to find her, so maybe I didn't do enough to hide her, to get rid of the bones. And the head, that Francis McDormand head." And then the other chef is like, "Oh, by the way, I threw that meat in for the stew tonight." And Tim Roth is like, "What?" And the other chef says, "Oh, yeah, that meat you left over there, the wax paper parcel. It wasn't in the usual place. It was behind something, but it was tied up the way you always tie your meat for the dinner stew, so I knew it was you that intended it for dinner. So it's already in the pot, being prepared for the king's welcome back feast." And, yep, this is happening. Tim is like, "Oh, okay, well, actually, we should..." And then just then, someone barges in and says, "Head chef, the king is requesting you." And so he immediately has to go. He can't do anything. And he sees the king, who, let's just say, is played by Charlie Hunnam, like Sons of Anarchy and a bunch of other stuff. I like Charlie Hunnam. He's got charisma. He'll be our king. And he says, "I was told my mother had imprisoned my wife. She's always doing ridiculous stuff like this. She's an incorrigible old woman. Now I freed my wife, thank goodness, but I can't find my mother anywhere to scold her. I know they had their disagreements, but it's too far. Now I know my mother confides in you, Tim Roth, head chef Tim Roth. Do you know where she is?" And Tim Roth says, "No, the last time I saw her, she was visiting your wife in the prison chamber." And Charlie Hunnam says, "Very well. We'll continue searching for her." And he tells his guards, "Check the grounds around the castle." And so Tim Roth, he gets back to the kitchen. But now he realizes it's far too late to change anything with the food without giving himself away in some way. He can't explain. How's he going to explain this? So he tells his other chef, "I'm to bring the newly freed queen something special that I will make myself." And the other chef just nods and says, "All right, fine, I'll finish up the main course." And so Tim Roth, he makes a nice array of fresh fruits and other nice little things, and he brings them to the young queen, Zoe Kravitz's chambers. Obviously the young queen, there's only one queen now. And the guard at her door knocks, and then she calls to come in, and the door is opened for Tim Roth, and he strides in. And Zoe sees him, and she's shocked. She doesn't know what to do or what to say. But Tim Roth just nods, like, "Act normal, everything's fine." And he goes to set the food on her table, and she meets him there, nonchalantly, as he's setting everything out, and he quietly says to her, "Things have gotten out of control. The king he's looking for his mother, and the queen will be the meat served in tonight's stew. I am sorry that this is happening. Do not eat the stew. It is Francis McDormand stew." And Zoe, of course, is shocked by all of this, but Tim Roth, he's got to go because he can't be conspicuous again. So once he's finished setting out the food, he finishes it right when he finishes talking, he has to leave. And he just says, I must go. And so that night at the great feast, everyone is seated at the table, and Tim Roth is standing at the side of the room, as head chef. He's overseeing things. And someone asks about the old queen, and the guards who checked around the castle. They come back and they say, we searched everywhere, King, but we found nothing. And Charlie Hunnam is like, very odd indeed. Well, perhaps she knew I'd be upset when I found out she'd imprisoned my wife and has chosen to hide out at one of her noble friends. Very well, she'll turn up in due time. And as he's saying this, the stew is being served. Of course, Tim Roth is relieved that they didn't find the head or any of the bones, but he's also mortified as he watches a servant set bowls out in front of everyone, and a servant sets a bowl in front of the queen, Zoe Kravitz, and she looks down at the bowl, and obviously she's very concerned, doesn't know exactly what to do. Her brow furrows, with this concern, and then she looks up, and she meets Tim Roth's gaze, and he's looking at her like, oh God, I'm so sorry, I don't know how this happened. And as she's looking back at him, her brow unfurrows, her eyes clear, and then her eyes narrow as a smirk plays at her lips, and she takes a big spoonful, puts it in her mouth, chews it with great gusto, just relishing every bit, glaring straight into Tim Roth's eyes the entire time, and swallows a big mouthful of Queen Frances McDormand stew. The end. Boom. Yup. So in the end, she's like, I never would have chosen this path, but you know what? I got that bitch. She wanted to eat me, and at the end of the day, I won. So basically, the ending is like, yeah, life is dark. Sometimes life is eat or be eaten. Literally in this sense. That's the animal kingdom, and this is quite an animal kingdom here. Maybe that's what we'll call this, Animal Kingdom. End of the day. I think it's a better title than The Mother-in-Law. Actually, The Mother-in-Law is a pretty good title. It's too basic of a title. Animal Kingdom is also too basic of a title. Yeah, I don't know. I prefer Animal Kingdom. Or just Eat or Be Eaten. Yeah, call it Eat or Be Eaten. That's a much better title. We'll go with Eat or Be Eaten. And at the end of the day, all you can hope for is that you're the one with the spoon in your hand and not the one in the bowl. Whew. Yeah, this was super dark. I will admit that was super dark. And I kind of apologize for making it way darker. I did that, but I also kind of don't, because I think this is awesome. So there you go. I'm going to do it my way. So that'll do it for this episode of the ShadowBear Story Sessions. And hey, I never say this. I always forget to say this, and frankly, it's not a concern. I just like doing the show, but it would be cool to be able to continue doing the show. So if you want to, if you like this, like and subscribe and stuff, and just like tell someone about it, It's like one person. I'm terrible at social media, marketing, all that stuff. So if you do listen and you like the show, tell somebody, someone in your life who also has a super dark sense of humor. And come back next time for, it's a few fragmented stories, I believe, are the next ones. I don't know what those will be like. We're going to play it by ear on that one. If they're all just like a mess and unsatisfying, I might just skip right ahead to a story called The Fox and the Geese, which is after that. So we'll see what we get. Don't know what to predict, but we'll see what we get. Come on back for that one, and I will see you next time.